fried chicken, collard greens, candied yams, sweet tea, apple cobbler. I know it's lunchtime. Hungry yet? Soul food, a staple of the African American culture. But here's the question. Is all this good eating killing the African American community? Up next on Another View, we talk with filmmaker Byron Hurt about his new documentary, Soul Food Junkies. And we introduce you to a new feature called Another View on Health with cardiologist Dr. Keith Newby. Plus, we'll take your calls at 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. I'm Barbara Ham Lee, and Another View is next, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing the issues and celebrating the successes of the African American community. This is Another View.
And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Let me take a moment right off the top of the show to send a special condolences from the Another View family to our audio engineer, Perry Smith, who lost his grandfather this week. And so we just want to send him our love and let him know that we're thinking about him. And we know that you all out there are thinking about him, too, because he's such an integral part to making this show the show that it is. So check out any African American family Sunday dinner, family reunion, HBCU college homecoming, or celebration, and more than likely you will find soul food. The African American Registry defines soul food as, quote, a term used for an ethnic cuisine traditionally prepared and eaten by African Americans of the southern United States. The style originated during slavery when slaves were given scraps of meat and allowed to grow veggies. Now, Keisha Antonetti with Gullah Cuisine Restaurant in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, says soul cooking just means you put your patience and love into the food. The food is absolutely delicious, but at a time when 4 out of 5 African American women are obese and African Americans overall are 1.4 times more likely to be obese than any other group, is it time to leave soul food alone? We welcome to Another View cardiologist Dr. Keith Newby. And Keith, you're going to be joining us every fourth Friday of the month for Another View on Health.
Yep, looking forward to it as well.
Absolutely. We appreciate you being here. And audience, just so you know, Dr. Newby said it was okay to interchange his name between Keith and Dr. Newby. So I'm not being disrespectful.
No ego to bruise here.
And also joining us by phone is filmmaker Byron Hurt. He is here to talk about his PBS Independent Lens documentary called Soul Food Junkies. How you doing, Byron?
I'm doing very well today. How are you, Bob?
Good. I'm doing great. I must tell you, last night we were at Hampton University where we did a screening of the PBS documentary, The Abolitionist. Okay. And at the end of the screening, I moderated that panel. And at the end of the screening, I promoted the fact that we were having you on. And the audience went wild. They have been watching your documentary online. They've been They watched it on PBS, and people have been calling in. They are very, very excited about this documentary. So before we get into the conversation, let's listen to a clip from the show.
Ham hocks, cornbread, mac and cheese, black-eyed peas, sweet potato pie, you name it, he loved it. My mother, Frances Hurt, married my pops at 17 and cooked most of his meals. Like most boys, I wanted to be just like my pops. At the dinner table, I ate whatever he ate. So I would stack up my plate with the grits and the eggs and the salt pork, and we would slice up our pork in nice little pieces and mix the grits and the eggs together and put all of the pork that we had cut up on top of the grits and the eggs, and then put it on top of our toast. That was like a typical Sunday breakfast. Breakfast on Sunday morning was when my pops and I really connected because we were sharing food with each other and establishing a family tradition. I never questioned what we were eating or how much. Back then, I just enjoyed my mother's delicious food. My father went from being young and fit to growing nearly twice his size. I worried all the time about my pop's health. My biggest fear was that he would get sick and die at an early age. Even though he talked about making changes, he continued to eat soul food meals that were high in fat and calories. 7 years ago, my pops got sick, and even still, he refused to give up eating traditional soul food, and I just couldn't understand why. My father's difficulty giving up soul food and other unhealthy foods made me curious about Black people and our relationship to food. I wanted to know more about soul food's history, where it came from, and why it is so important to Black cultural identity. How did Southern food become soul food? Is soul food good or bad for you? Is soul food causing illness and early death in my community? These questions set me out on a national journey to find out if we are a culture of soul food junkies.
So, Byron, are we a culture of soul food junkies?
Well, I think it's a really provocative question, and it's one that I don't really have a true answer to, but I do know that we are very much in love with our culinary tradition, and many people do not want to give it up, but are open to the idea and the possibility of finding ways to maintain it, but to cook it and prepare it in healthier ways so that we can preserve it. I think that soul food has a lot of meaning to us as a culture. I think it gives us a cultural identity, and I also think that it's something that's been passed down from generation to generation. So I think people want to preserve it and do what we can to honor it, but also live a little healthier.
But let's go back to the history of soul food, because back in slavery times, and you talk about this in your film, how it was more about fresh vegetables, things that the slaves could catch, fish, wildlife, and so forth. And it wasn't necessarily cooked as it is now with all the pork and the heavy butters and things of that sort. So in the beginning, it really was a healthy food, wasn't it?
Well, I think overall, there are many foods that come out of the culinary tradition that are healthy, like greens, mustard greens, collard greens, kale, all of those different things. And based on my research and based on certain interviews that I've conducted for this film, we were mainly a vegetable-based culture, and that meat was something that we ate, on Sundays or on the weekends or during holidays or festivities or what have you. And so we mainly ate vegetables as our main meal. But that has changed over time, and we've gone from eating a mostly vegetable-based diet to eating a diet that is high in meat, high in fat, higher in calories, and we don't exercise and we don't work out. We don't burn off those calories nearly as much as we used to. And so I think that's kind of what has led to a lot of nutritional-related diseases that could be prevented, but are not, because of the way that we prepare our food.
When you used to talk to your dad about his eating habits, and about the changes that you noticed in him, what would he tell you?
He would just get defensive. I mean, he would make faces. He would, he made it clear that this was not a conversation that he wanted to have, and that he wanted me to get off of his back, basically. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, even after he became ill, it was clear that he wanted to continue to eat the things that made him feel good and made him happy.
Dr. Newby, it really is. It does come down sometimes to that. It is a comfort food. I mean, it is something that people use to feel good.
Yeah. We deal with this all the time on the medical side of things. One of the biggest issues we see, and I think Mr. Hurt would agree with this, is you see that correlation of the foods you eat with a lot of these health risks and an escalation of health problems, hypertension, diabetes, stroke, heart attacks, all come from and this is when I heard your documentary, or let's just say I saw your documentary last night. I was very intrigued with it, and I saw your thoughts about your father, about the pancreatic cancer, and you were trying to research whether or not it was related to the foods that he ate. And I do see a strong correlation with a lot of heart health risks with, and I know it is with cancer as well, but just as much, if not equally so, the heart health risk. We deal with that all the time. People don't understand that hypertension is highly associated with salt intake, and a lot of people will think that they'll tell me, well, I don't add any salt to my food. And I tell them, and I ask them, I say, well, do you look at the content of that which you do eat? I say, because when you're going out to a restaurant or you go to, or if you even buy packaged foods, are you really looking at that sodium content? Because that can play a big factor of what your blood pressures run. I mean, to the point of a teaspoon. There was a research that has been done. I did a talk on hypertension, and they made a comment that if you take a teaspoon of salt, which is 2,500 milligrams, if you were to just eat that, I know.
I can't even think about that.
Well, they actually studied this and drank water behind it, check your blood pressure an hour later. They say the average increase in blood pressures were up to 40 points higher.
Wow.
Within an hour of doing that. And that was just coming from that teaspoon of salt. Now, again, granted, none of us would ever do that intentionally, but 2,500 milligrams is not a lot of sodium when you really think about what we see in the average diet.
And it is our habit to just automatically pick up the salt shaker when we sit down in front of a meal.
And a lot of people
I get to do that all the time.
Yeah, a lot of people feel better about themselves, saying, well, I never add anything to it. I'm like, well, half the time you don't have to.
I've become a whole lot more conscious of salt and sodium and even, putting salt on the foods that I cook. And I've cut down on that dramatically. And I've used other seasonings, so that I don't miss the salt. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the sodium content on a lot of these packaged foods, the processed foods, is extremely high, and if you're not paying attention to it, it could really come back to haunt you.
And also, Byron, isn't that one of the things that you found in your research for the documentary, that the whole idea of moving from people cooking soul food at home, on Sunday or on special holidays, as you talked about, and it becoming a fast food phenomenon, if you will, that also has contributed to the growth in obesity and so forth?
In my film, soul food is a launching pad for a larger discussion about food in our communities and the access to food that we have. So I do talk about soul food because it's a part of my family's tradition, but I also talk about the food industry and processed foods and fast food, the amount of fast food that we as African-American people and people of color eat on a regular basis. And I felt like that was really important to do because, I did not want to in any way kind of scapegoat or throw soul food under the bus because there are other factors at play that have a huge role in determining our overall health and well-being. And I think fast food and processed food play a really big role, in our health. And
also the whole idea of food deserts and the inability to be able to get fresh vegetables and fresh foods.
Yeah, I've learned so much throughout the making of the film and even after making this film, because I've been showing the film around the country. And so, there's some people who say, well, food deserts is not even the appropriate term. Some people call it food swamps. Some people call it food apartheid. Some people say that, what we really need to be striving for is food sovereignty, the ability to be able to produce and create our own food, because the food companies and the food industry is not really addressing our needs, as a community. And so we're going to have to do that for ourselves by way of urban gardening, planting our own food, our own vegetables, that kind of thing.
Go ahead, Dr. Newby.
I was going to say, I'm laughing at myself when I'm here because you're absolutely right. The unfortunate reality is you get some people like myself. I've tried to do the garden thing, and I got like about 8 brown thumbs. Everything I try to grow. I mean, my wife laughs at me about this all the time. She said, "You out there again, huh?" I'm like, I'm gonna get it right eventually. But we see that quite a bit, and I think you're absolutely right. I tell you what, one of the biggest problems I'm finding is, my wife and I talk about this all the time as well, is, to eat healthy, you got to spend a lot of money. I mean, if you're not careful about how things are going, like you could go to a fast food restaurant, you get a whole bunch of stuff for $1, right, and that $1 gets you all this food. But the unfortunate problem is not food that's really good for you individually. And then you go to a place you go to like some of these like higher end
Grocery stores and stuff.
Yeah, then you get all this healthy stuff, but it costs like 8 times as much. So it can leave people frustrated if they're not smart with it. That's why I try to grow things. If I can at least get my act together and actually grow something that actually lives throughout the summer, I mean, I would be actually okay because that is a big deal. I remember when I watched your documentary, I saw your uncle does his own garden. And that actually looked nice. I tell him I'm going to have to go up there and meet with him, and maybe he can give me a couple of pointers.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. I want to talk about your relationship with soul food. Was it something that was very important to your family? And also how, if you are still enjoying soul food, are you cooking it in a different manner, a way to make it healthier? 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Byron, when you're going around the country and showing this documentary, what's the reaction that you're getting?
It's been incredible. It's been really incredible. People are really appreciating the film. They laugh, throughout the film. They're moved by it emotionally. I think the story of my father really resonates with them. So I've been showing the film all over the country, and the response is generally the same. I mean, the film is really connecting with people, and it's really creating a lot of conversation about people's stories, their family stories about their parents or another loved one, who they're concerned about or they want to do better, or even, people who want to do better themselves. So I can't be any more happy or pleased with the way people are responding.
Just so that you know, audience, also, we are re-airing Soul Food Junkies on February the 7th at 9 p.m. on WHRO-TV 15, our sister station. 9 p.m. on February the 7th. It's called Soul Food Junkies. Dr. Newby, if someone comes into your office and they are suffering from issues that are leading to heart issues in particular, do you sit down and do an analysis with them of what they're eating and how that works?
Yeah, the biggest thing is trying to get people to be a little bit more upfront about what they actually do eat. Because, and I know when you feel like you're under the gun, you're coming to the doctor's office, you want to always sound like you're doing better than what you actually are. We'll get somebody that's 100 pounds overweight that always says their biggest lines, but I hardly ever eat anything. And you're looking at them and you're saying, I hear you, and I think it's all relative to what you're used to doing, but you're taking in more than your body needs, and it's impacting on your overall health. So we do sit down with them on a regular basis, actually, because I think that's very important, because if they have hypertension, they have diabetes, what they eat is going to impact on those figures.
Okay. Mina joins us from Hampton. Hi, Mina, you're on the air. Hello, Mina. You're on the air.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes, good afternoon. This is Nina Bruton calling from Hampton, Virginia, and I was present last night at Hampton University.
Thank you very much.
So thank you for your time. Mr. Hurt, you did a wonderful job with the documentary.
Thank you.
And just to piggyback on the point that you all just made about, or that the doctor just made about the cost of eating healthy compared to going in and raiding the value menu at McDonald's or Wendy's or wherever. The thing that I had to come to grips with is that I am either going to pay more now to eat healthy, or I'm going to pay more later in health care and the drugs that it's going to take to maintain my living. And I think that's, if people try to put that in perspective, then that will help them, it'll help them to be willing to spend the more money now. Of all the things that we waste money on in the world every day, be it your Starbucks or going out to the movies or your alcoholic beverages out with friends for happy hour or whatever, we need to make a decision that we're willing to pay the cost for our overall health.
Okay, who wants to respond? Dr. Newby?
Well, I think she's absolutely right. The unfortunate reality is a lot of people just live for the now, and even though her point is absolutely on point. I mean, because you will healthcare dollars, it will get you later, but people tend to always think, well, I'll put this off another day, or I'll start this next week, and I know I need to do this, and I'll just keep putting it off. And I tell you what I found is if the families do it together, meaning if you have a spouse or a brother, sister, whatever, and everybody decides it kind of is a unit, do things, and they're willing to hear, what the other person has to say. I've always found that's the best motivator because people keep each other in check. Somebody's just slipping down the crack. It's almost like an AA meeting or something else where, because it almost is an addiction like anything else. And food's an addiction, just like alcohol and tobacco and all these other things out there. And I think having somebody that, you can depend on that can help you during your weak moments, when you sit there, because, you get together, say, let's go eat. And and you say, oh, no, but we're not going to eat here. Oh, man, I should have left you at home. But that will drive you to do something different.
Byron, your sister is vegetarian, and I think you're moving more towards a vegetarian lifestyle. Is that correct?
Yeah, I eat mostly vegetables myself, and I do eat fish occasionally. I'm trying to even cut back on the amount of fish that I eat. But I eat a lot of whole grains. I started eating quinoa. I'm not sure if you ever heard of quinoa or ever eaten quinoa. Quinoa, and I eat a lot of kale. I eat a lot of spinach, salads, broccoli, that kind of thing. And these are all foods that are very nutritious, and they fill you up. But many of them are also very much a part of the soul food tradition. Kale, collard greens, lima beans, black-eyed peas, all of those things are very much part of the tradition, and they're also very healthy for you. They taste good.
But you're not putting in that ham hock.
I'm not.
To cook with those black-eyed peas, right?
I make kale salads. I make kale salads. I eat my kale live. Sometimes I make kale smoothies, which I would have never thought about doing until somebody put me onto them, about maybe a year ago or so. And, they taste great. It tastes great, and it's very refreshing, and you're getting a lot of nutrients into your body.
Now, I'm curious about something, though. In your family, especially when you talked about your sister being vegetarian, was she vegetarian when you all were young? Because if your mother was cooking soul food, she was not then.
She ate what we ate. We all ate the same kind of food. Pork chops, fried chicken.
So she changed as she became an adult.
Yeah, she changed when she became an adult, and as she told me, she was trying to look for ways to, one, maintain her weight, and two, to help her skin look good. She was having problems with acne, so she started to read a lot about how certain foods help with acne and how certain greasy foods led to more acne. So she started seeing results based on the changes that she made. And I started to see those results in her, and I started to say, you know what, well, let me see what my sister's doing, because my sister's 5 years older than me, but I look 5 years older than my sister. Okay, she takes great care of herself, and I'm not proud of that, by the way. But I'm trying to reduce that gap a little bit. By changing what I eat.
It's interesting because in my family, my sister became vegetarian, I think around the age of 12 or so. And my mother would actually cook separate foods for her. I'm thinking about like a Thanksgiving dinner when we would come home, and she would make vegetables without the meat for my sister and with the meat for the rest of us. And
my mother does the same thing, and that's what mommies do. I mean, mommies want to make their children happy, and so... my mother acquiesced, but she also changed some of her eating habits as well.
Wow. Andrea joins us also from Hampton. Hi, Andrea. You're on the air.
Hi, Miss Hamley.
Hi.
Hurt, Dr. Newby.
Hi, how are you?
Before my quick comment, I just wanted to say when we watched it online as a Twitter community, what I was so pleased about was that it was from a male point of view. And I think so many times when we discuss health issues and, a lot of the natural movements, it's a women-led movement. And so I was so excited to have you, Mr. Hurt, bring it from a male point of view and make it accessible to them.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was awesome. We had fun online watching. But the bigger point that I wanted to talk about is coming from a West Indian American household. I didn't grow up with soul food. And so when I moved down to Virginia, it was there. And so I was like, oh, this is great. It's in the movies. I want to try it. And so I would eat it, all the time. And I just noticed that I felt so heavy and I felt so, tired. And, of course, that comfy feeling that comes along with it. But eating it on a regular basis, I realized was not going to work for me. So now it might be something that I have on a special occasion or on a holiday, but definitely not something to eat all the time. So really, I just wanted to say thank you for putting it out there and putting those other options that we can eat, things that seem soul food-like but have a more healthy, feeling on our body. So thank you guys for the film and for what we're listening. We're all listening out here in Hampton Roads, so thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andrea. We appreciate the call. Dr. Newby?
Yeah, that was actually interesting. And I think that term, one of the things you hear when people start trying to talk about amounts of the food that you eat, soul food, and she made a very valid point by saying doing things on a special occasion. That term moderation, and actually that was mentioned in a documentary when I watched it last night. A lot of people don't know what that means.
That's true. That is true.
Because that's a relative term to say something is you're moderately doing something. That's all a matter of your opinion of what moderate is. And, and I try to talk to, people. And I know, so you get Thanksgiving, Christmas, everybody gets together, and you understand those things. And I tell my patients all the time, listen, you get a pass from me on this. I think, that's a time for family getting together, and you want to enjoy yourself. And a lot of times that will lend to that. I said, but now we have to get back to business. But I always try to talk to them. I say, listen, if you get a plate, just really, do you have to cover every
square inch of the plate?
And can you just say, okay, I'm going to get a little bit of this? And I try to tell them all the time, I say, listen, just, a lot of times, if you have a taste for some people love cake, some people love ice cream. I say, you don't have to get like a bowl that's 3 tons high of ice cream. I mean, a lot of times you get a couple spoonfuls. That's really all you wanted. The rest of it is just fluff. And, and I tell them, I say, why don't you just try yourself? It's okay, I'm just going to have this amount, and I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to let it go. And a lot of people can't, some people just not used to doing that, but I tell you, it will satisfy that craving for it, and you can kind of start trimming yourself down to where you don't need it much at all.
Absolutely. If you're just joining us, we're talking about soul food and health with cardiologist Dr. Keith Newby and filmmaker Byron Hurt. His new film is called Soul Food Junkies. Give us a call. Join our conversation, 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. I want to ask both of you, what is your favorite soul food, and how did you like it prepared? Let me start with you, Byron.
Yeah, I was going to say, let him go first.
Well, wow. When I go to a soul food restaurant today, I usually get like a vegetarian, plate. So I usually get collard greens, maybe rice and beans. I might have macaroni and cheese, but I only eat macaroni and cheese like occasionally, and I may have some candy yams. That's when I go to a soul food restaurant. But I love sweet potatoes, though. Like I don't cook candy yams anymore. I just bake the sweet potato, and I put cinnamon on my sweet potato, and I eat it that way. And I think sweet potatoes are delicious. But my favorite sweet potato, my favorite dessert is sweet potato pie. That's my favorite soul food dessert, and it's my mama's sweet potato pie in particular that I love.
With whole butter.
Well, yeah,
lots and lots of butter. That makes it delicious. What's your favorite?
Well, I still think that fried chicken is, probably and I'm not a big fish person, but when I eat fish, I just want it fried. So I hardly ever eat fish much because I just something about the way it tastes when it's fried. It's just I like that better, But it's just by the time I get done, I'm like that young lady that called earlier. I'm ready to go to sleep. So I just try to learn to stay away from a lot of that. And, but I run into that issue with, the way I was raised. And my mom, my father was a physician. And interesting, I'm going to make this quick point while I have Mr. Hurt on the phone. When I was watching your documentary last night, I saw the jacket you had on. I like that jacket you had on. It's purple and gold.
You like that?
Yeah,
I
like that a lot. I like that a lot.
All right.
Little commonality there.
We can talk about that.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Just for our listening audience, both of these gentlemen are members of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity, and that is what they're talking about.
Well, I knew I liked this
And the same in return. My father actually was Beta chapter when he pledged, back in the, I think, 1940s, I think it was.
Lincoln.
Yep, Lincoln. And, one of the things that my mom used to make for him, I never could get past this concept, but she used to fix him brains and eggs. I never even heard of that before until that came around. And my father died at age 41. He actually had a primary cardiac tumor, which is something you never hear of. I mean, I've been doing cardiology now almost 20 years, and I've never seen anybody with a primary heart tumor before. Now, again, don't think that had anything necessarily to do with the diet per se, but you never know what may trigger a cancer to form. But I know that was a big thing my mom used to fix for him, and she told me he used to love that stuff. I just can't even get past the concept still, but I know we see that a lot, is that kind of upbringing where you would eat certain types of foods that
Byron, I have to ask you about the scene in the movie where you eat the corn that had been cooked in pig ears and pig feet.
Yeah.
How was that for you?
Well, like I said in the film, it was the turkey neck was delicious. I have to be honest with you. But it was I felt like I was being put on the spot, and I felt a little awkward because I did not want to eat anything from that pot. But like I said, I was raised to not turn down food when it's offered to you, and I didn't want to offend those brothers. They were kind enough to talk to me on camera. And then, it was an aspect of me sort of doing it because, we were making the film, so I thought it would be kind of entertaining to taste it. But
I'm curious, did you have a body reaction because you're not eating?
I did not. I did not. Not in that case.
Okay.
I have. It's happened before where I've eaten pork after not eating pork for a very, very long time, and my body reacted to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was afraid of that, but nothing happened. I was okay. I lived through it.
You lived through it.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I lived to talk about it.
I was going to ask you, did you have any withdrawal? Or you next day you say, I want some more of that.
No. I didn't have any withdrawal, but I didn't die. So that's a good thing.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Bobby joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Bobby. You're on the air.
Hey, Barbara, and
Hi.
Thanks for taking my call, of course. And you can probably anticipate my question. I'm also a vegetarian and trying to give up the little bit of fish that I eat, and I keep looking for a protein source that is more palatable than some of the traditional non-food, non-based protein sources. And I'm wondering what your guest does.
Anybody? You want to take that, Byron?
Beans. Red beans, kidney beans, black beans. Those are real good sources of protein. I drink protein shakes, like great protein shakes, and I put that into my smoothies, and that's one source of protein. And also, from what I understand, kale has a lot of protein in it. Like certain green vegetables also have a lot of protein in it, more protein than most people give them credit for. So, that's where I get my protein. Also, the quinoa that I mentioned also is a source of protein as well.
And quinoa is a grain, correct?
It's a grain. It's
yes.
a whole grain, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that help you out, Bobby?
It does always. Thanks, Miss Barbara.
Thank you for calling in. We appreciate it.
Sure.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. I'm still curious for those of you out there to call in and tell us about your experiences with soul food. And we know that soul food is not necessarily limited to the African American community, that there are a lot of people who enjoy soul food. And I know that as I move around the country, one of the things we used to look for is there a good soul food restaurant in town?
A lot of those around. I don't care where you go, but definitely southern territory is more so. But there's one opening up. I think it's in Hampton. I know there's one. I think it's one over there now, and I know there's one I heard is looking at opening up here in Norfolk. That was specifically for it's going to I guess address that need or people's desire to have that. So we see that quite a bit. What's been your experience as you've traveled the country, Byron? What are you seeing out there?
I see a lot of soul vegetarian restaurants that are
Mm-hmm.
opening in various places around the country. I was just in Oakland, California, and there was a soul vegetarian place right near my hotel. I didn't get a chance to go there because my time was short, but I see many, many soul vegetarian restaurants, and I also see a lot of restaurants that are sort of modifying the way that they prepare certain things, the way that they prepare their greens. They may not use ham hocks, they may use turkey. Some may go a little further than that and only use olive oil and other, sort of seasonings, to help flavor it.
Well,
So I'm seeing more of that.
let me ask you this then, because as people start to change the way that the veggies and all are cooked, does it still make it soul food?
I think it does, personally.
Okay.
I mean, that's my opinion. But, I think people are very, very much married to taste, and people are afraid that if they change the way they prepare the food or just by eating something that's prepared differently, that they're giving up something, they're losing something in terms of the taste. And I just think that, as someone who has gone from one end of the spectrum to the other, I think you have to give yourself some time, for your palate to adjust to something that tastes a little bit differently. But if you give it a chance, then it'll, you can eat just as well as you ate before. But a lot of people are not open to that, and they taste something one time and they say, "Oh, that doesn't taste the same," And sometimes you have to make some sort of a small sacrifice in order to get the healthier benefits.
Okay.
But and I'll say that, I mean, my mother does not use ham hocks, and I think her collard greens are just as delicious as they were when I was, a young boy growing up.
Yeah,
It's just like what I've learned
Dr.
is
Newby?
what I do. I love to cook in the house. Especially on weekends that I'm off. That's like my thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I learned quickly with cooking things like green beans. I love green beans, but I put olive oil in it. And I tell you, just doing olive oil and a little bit of seasoning, and it really comes out very nicely.
I actually learned a new recipe with string beans also, where you toss it in olive oil and bake them.
Yeah,
bake the
okay.
string beans, and they're delicious. Absolutely.
Wow.
Bob joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Bob. You're on the air.
Hi. Very interesting conversation.
Thank you.
My father was raised in the country in North Carolina. My mother was from Nebraska. She was a beef eater. As a child, a boy, I would go out to the country for the summers and spend a couple of weeks and eat what they made on the farm and so forth. And my aunt's biscuits, as I recall, were the best I can ever remember. But she made them with lard, and they just tasted so great. And, of course, she cooked the vegetables with fat meat, a lot of pork and so forth. The stuff tasted great. We call it just good old country cooking, Southern food. But unfortunately, most of those people, by the time they were around 50 or 55, had very high blood pressure. They would stroke out. And unfortunately, I don't think they lived past about 65 or 70, and they were lucky if they made that. So that type of cooking really tastes good, but obviously it's bad for you. Now, I heard someone mention brains and eggs, and we've heard of all that stuff, chitlings and all that. I think back then in the old days, that's what they had to survive on. They just ate everything they could from the pig, and so it was probably a necessity, and they just learned to like it. But pig's feet and all that kind of stuff, I wouldn't even think about it. I was a city boy, but I love vegetables. I love kale and all these things, but I have to have a little seasoning on them. I can't eat just plain kale. It's like eating styrofoam. So what would be a good alternative to the fat meat seasoning? To season these greens and so forth.
Okay. I'm going to get Dr. Newby to address the heart attack issue, and Byron, you can address the seasoning issue. Let's start with you, Dr. Newby. Well, in terms of people growing older and continuing to eat this food.
Well, I think that what eventually happens is because, a lot of people will say they develop a health issue, and they say, well, I've never had this before. And I tell them, I say, yeah, well, you've never been, 20 years older than you were before either. And so your body's changed. Your needs change. You're going to be more apt to have the excess problem associated. A lot of what I found, a lot of soul food diets tend to be high in carbohydrate. And that carbohydrate is, I know a lot of people, and the fat is bad. Don't misunderstand the saturated fats are bad, but what I'm finding is in my research is the carbohydrate content could be equal, if not more so, detrimental in that it's what leads to all the diabetes, the cholesterol problems, and which leads to all the clogged artery problems. So we're running into that. As you get older, your risk of developing heart disease is going to go up just with age alone. So then you add these other things on top of it, and I think that's what's actually triggering a lot of this to occur. Those cholesterols can go through the roof, and there was some data that came out talking about low-calorie versus low-carb diets, and what they had found was, because there was this time with the Atkins diet and South Beach, everybody just thought that those were killing people, but what they found was that was not the case. The amount of weight loss was equal between the two, but what they found was that the cholesterol profiles in those patients or those people that did low carbs were markedly better than they were in just a regular
So we
low
need
calorie.
to watch our carbs as well. And
most
Byron,
definitely.
some suggestions on other ways to season.
Olive oil, red pepper flakes, chicken stock, garlic, and onions. That's
Hey,
a really
that sounds
way.
good to
I'm
me.
telling you, that does. That sounds delicious. Absolutely. Jeff joins us from Hampton. Hi, Jeff. You're on the air.
Hi, how are you? How are you, Dr. Newby and Mr. Hurt?
Doing well.
I grew up, my parents are from, my mom was from New Orleans, not New Orleans, New Orleans. And I grew up with soul food also, but early on in my teens, I converted to a healthier lifestyle. And I found that the thing that people like about eating food is the way that it's seasoned. And what are most seasonings made of? Vegetables. So it's interesting that if you would put more different types of vegetables, all the colors in which you eat, you could actually get those tastes, because the body likes sweet, salt, and fat. And I tell you, if you can just, like Dr. We said, moderate that, you would be fine. What I tell people a lot of times is, if you do a lot of good, you can do a little bad.
Okay, Jeff, we appreciate that philosophy. Thanks for calling. So, again, back to that moderation issue, Dr. Newby. If you do a little good, you can do a little bad. Okay. Susan joins us from Newport News. Hi, Susan. You're on the air.
Hi. I was married to a vegetarian for a number of years, and I happened to turn on the radio when a lady called in about ways to make being a vegetarian more palatable. Well, my ex-husband had insisted that we raise our son vegetarian, and so I did a lot of research and found that by mixing different types of protein, you can get complete proteins. For instance, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is a complete protein by way of the fact that you've used a grain and a nut. And rice and beans, that's a complete protein. And also, there are some cookbooks out there. My ex-husband was a Seventh-day Adventist, and there were several Seventh-day Adventist cookbooks that I used that had some really delicious recipes. One that you use nuts and oatmeal and eggs and onions and some spices and formed a patty and kind of browned it that had kind of a real meaty texture. There's really a lot of options out there for people that want to go vegetarian.
Okay, thank you so much for the call, Susan. So we're not throwing soul food under the bus. What we're saying is moderation. And kind of pay attention to what you're eating on a regular basis and enjoy the tradition.
Well, I think in addition to that, just how much of that, when I say how much, meaning like if you have different choices you're making, you got to take some of these good choices and some not so good choices, and some people want to take just all the bad choices and just put it all together. And I think if you say, okay, I'm gonna have a little bit of this, but I'm also gonna get this to offset that, and you kind of tend to go down that path, I think that's going to be a better long-term approach. And you say, okay, and a lot of times, I always say get yourself on a reward system. I'm started this diet myself, and lifestyle changes again. I go through this every few years, and when I get started on it, I say I'm going to stick to my guns, and then I'm going to reward myself and say like a month. I'm going to say I'm going to allow myself opportunity to do one thing or the other. And what I found is when I do that after that month's time, I may want to do it the first couple of months, but after I get used to it, then I don't even really
have
that
want
need.
it anymore.
Yeah, so then I think that's reflective back to what Mr. Hurt was saying earlier. He's got so used to not eating certain things now. It's just not. I mean, he'll get it, he'll enjoy it, but it's not like he's going through withdrawal after it to say, "Oh, I need some more of that. Give me some more." And I think that's really what it boils down to, is getting yourself in that lifestyle change. And I know it's not easy. I mean, we all have our crosses to bear as it relates to that. But I think, again, that's why I think having other people to help is important.
And Byron, I'm going to let you have the last word in terms of what you want people to get out of Soul Food Junkie, and then we'll tell them where they can find it.
Well, I want people to understand that, this is not about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. This is about both honoring our legacy, but also modifying it so that we can live longer, healthier lives. And also to pay a lot more attention to the amount of fast food and junk food and processed food that we eat, and also have access to in our communities. That's very, very important, because a lot of people don't have access to healthy food. So we have to figure out what we have to do to make up for that, and do it, and prioritize our health over everything else, because our health, we only have one body. We have to treat our body as a temple. It's really important. So those are some of the things that I would say to people. And also drink more water, less soda, less sugar, sweetened beverages. That's really important too.
Byron Hurt, who is a filmmaker, and his film is called Soul Food Junkies. You can see it on February the 7th at 9 p.m. on WHRO-TV 15. And Dr. Keith Newby, cardiologist, who will be with us every fourth Friday in the month for another view on health. Gentlemen, thank you so much, and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Give me some chicken, franks and fries, living past me and lettuce, I'ma pass it by. So keep shoveling onto my plate. Give me some sweets and a lot of cake.
And welcome back. One Hampton couple is on a mission to help people make better decisions when it comes to their food choices. That's why Jeff and Gigi Fikes spend every Monday night teaching healthy alternatives to the foods we eat and tasty ways to prepare them. Our Lisa Godley recently sat in as they coached clients to healthier bodies during their juicing boot camp.
This is a lifestyle change. It's something that is not just for weight loss.
Jeff and Gigi Fikes strongly believe that healthier eating will add life to your years and years to your life. That's why 15 years ago they opened their health food store, The Healthy Connection. As Jeff explains, their goal is to teach people to uncover the underlying cause of health problems instead of treating the symptoms.
Juicing Boot Camp is a course that we started because we had a lot of people coming in with a lot of different situations that we knew was lifestyle related. So my wife and I decided to develop a course that would help them to take control of their health naturally by understanding the difference between food and what food is and what food isn't. Our bodies work on three things: food, air, and water. But a lot of what we put in our body, it's not food. You go out to a fast food restaurant, all the preservatives, additives, pesticides that are using in the foods that are being grown, a lot of that has an effect on our body that we're not aware of.
The cinnamon that you're getting in the stores, not good. Especially if you are diabetic and you're taking cinnamon.
Gigi is a certified natural health professional and herbal consultant, or doctor of naturopathy.
We are living organisms, and we need to put in living foods. When we're eating the standard American diet, that SAD diet we talked about a couple weeks ago, are we taking in living or dead food? We're eating dead foods because we learned that the secret to health is enzymes. And once we actually broil, bake, fry, irradiate, pesticide and herbicide galore out foods, it's no longer living. It's actually becoming a dead organism.
We watched as the class turned fresh pears into pear juice. As we quickly found out, teaching healthy eating techniques is only part of the juicing boot camp.
Into your cups, if you would. We're going to do our blood pressure tonic a little bit later, but we wanted to get some pear juicing in so that you can have enough energy to jump on the rebounder and Tai Chi, and we're going to do a few other things that are going to help us to get up and move, okay?
And we go over in the class about digestion. We talk about the 3 phases of digestion. We talk about water. We talk about probiotics and enzymes. We touch on neurotransmitters. We touch on sleep, deep breathing, and a lot of different things that people are not aware of that it's part of their lifestyles.
Tara Miley has only been juicing a few weeks, and she couldn't be happier with the changes she's experienced.
Blood sugars have come down, and I haven't had to take nearly the amount of insulin that I normally take. And I feel better. My health's just gotten better, and I've lost weight. So I'm finding that it's actually helping me. It's changing my life. My blood pressure is better. I mean, a lot of things are happening in just a short period of time.
So the whole class is designed to help people change their life, and that's what they're telling us as a result, is they're seeing phenomenal results in the class.
Raw broccoli, raw string beans. You'll get used to it. You're going to be craving it. It's just part of nature.
For more information on the Healthy Connections Juicing Boot Camp, just log on to our website at anotherviewradio.org and click on the Healthy Connection link. For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
And it's all about healthy lifestyle choices. Time now for things to view and do in Hampton Roads.
You will be my Saturday love.
The Norfolk City Sister Association holds its annual luncheon on Sunday, January 27th at noon at the Norfolk Yacht and Country Club. The group is dedicated to creating and strengthening partnerships between Norfolk and its 9 sister cities. This year's keynote speaker is Mary Kane, President and CEO of Sister Cities International. For more information, visit norfolksistercities.org. Norfolk State University graduate and best-selling author Curtis Bunn will hold a book signing and discussion on his latest novel, Homecoming Weekend, on Friday, February 1st from 5 until 7 at the Chesapeake Marriott Hotel on Woodlake Drive. It's the story of the time-honored tradition of homecoming on an HBCU campus with Norfolk State as the setting. It's free and open to the public. Call 635-2736 to find out more. Nominations are being accepted for the 25th Annual Women of Distinction Awards given by the YWCA of Southampton Roads. The deadline is February 1st. Details and nomination forms can be found at ywca-shr.org or call 625-4248. And don't miss the exhibit Drawn and Quartered, featuring the works of artist Olive Leonhardt at the Hermitage Museum and Gardens in Norfolk. Leonhardt was born in Mississippi in 1895 and in the 1930s published a book called New Orleans, Drawn and Quartered, where she beautifully interprets the people of color of that city. The exhibit is now until February the 19th. These events and more are on our website, anotherviewradio.org. You can also find podcasts of all of our shows, and you can sign up for our eView newsletter, a once-a-week reminder of upcoming programs. And let me tell you how to get to our podcast. If you go to WHRO.org, click on Listen, and then click on Podcasts. And every show, every Another View show is there for your listening pleasure. So please take advantage of the podcast and check out programs that you may have missed in the past. Next week, the author of My Black Family, My White Privilege, the story of a white man's journey through racism in this country. That should be a fascinating discussion. For producer Lisa Godley, audio engineer Ray Lynn, sitting in for Perry Smith, Miss Danielle Jenkins, who answered the phones, I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Stay warm, stay safe out there in the snow, and let's get together again next Friday at noon for Another View.